So this is John 15:18 through 16:4. Oh, and I do have my little badge on. So remember, you can always ask the elders questions. elders@watermarktampa.com. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belonged to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have no excuse for their sin. Whoever hates me hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them the works no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. As it is, they have seen, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason. When the advocate comes, whom I will send to you from the Father, the Spirit of truth, who goes out from the Father, he will testify about me. And you also must testify, for you have been with me from the beginning. All of this I have told you so that you will not fall away. They will put you out of the synagogue. In fact, the time is coming when anyone who kills you will think that they are offering a service to God. They will do such things because they have not known the Father or me. I have told you this so that when their time comes, you will remember that I warned you about them. I did not tell you this from the beginning because I was with you, but now I am going to him who sent me. And none of you asked me, where are you going? Rather, you are filled with grief because I have said these things. But very truly I tell you, it is for your good that I am going away. Unless I go away, the advocate will not come to you. But if I go, I will send him to you. When he comes, he will prove the world to be in the wrong about sin and righteousness and judgment.
You're an overachiever. She read more than what she had to. That's all right. Get a preview of next week. Hi, everybody. Good morning. If you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Leo. I'm one of the pastors and elders here, and I'm glad you're here. Today, I think we're going to have some fun with this. I actually finished the sermon on Wednesday, which is really good for me. And then Thursday, I went on my spirit walk, and I redid the whole sermon. So, yeah, hopefully this goes well. But you guys are gracious. That's what I love about you guys. We're going to talk about this concept of the world. I came up in the Caribbean American Pentecostalism. And when you come to faith in that tradition, and just like I'm sure a lot of you in other traditions, one of the first things that you must do is stop listening to secular music. That was a problem for me. Many of you know, Sharp Claw Thriller. That was my rap name. And it was problematic when they told me, stop listening to Hot 97, you need to listen to Spirit FM. This was problematic. Stop listening to Nas. You need to listen to Carmen. Let me stop there. I went to a Carmen concert years ago, actually before I actually came to Jesus. My aunt was trying to disciple me, save me, and she took me to a Carmen concert, and I was like in the thick of West Coast and East Coast hip hop. I mean, it was like, and she takes me to this Carmen concert thinking, I'm going to be able to relate to it. Man, it did the exact opposite. I didn't ever want to be a Christian after that concert. So we're gonna do what I really enjoy doing. It's like demystifying some of these concepts, sort of translating them, giving them some context. So pray with me. Father, thank you for this time and space with my brothers and sisters, Lord. I pray that whatever distractions that we have in front of us, that we can put them to the side just for a moment and just make space for your Spirit to do the work in us through your word, through your message. Still our hearts. I know that there's a lot going on in the world, and we see injustice left and right, Father, and we want to take action. We want to do things. We want to get to work. And for many of us, we don't know how. We don't know how to relate to the world. And I pray that you would help us, Father, through this message to make some connections, connect some dots, and activate us to be your hands and feet. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so I want to start here in John 15, 18 through 19. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belonged to the world, it will love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. This is why the world hates you. What does Jesus mean by this? What does he mean by the world? If you came up in church like I did, right, and I wasn't raised in the church. I actually came to faith in my early 20s. So I actually missed out on a lot of the things that I hear like Tommy talking about and some of you, which, thank God. I'm like, I can't relate, but praise him. Praise be to he for missing out on 90s Christianity. But anyway, in the 80s, right? Moral majority. So this, like if you came up in church, like this was a rallying cry, right? This was the verse that you would sort of go back to and sort of point to and say, like, this is proof that the world is out to get us, right? Just had a YouTube notification pop up and it's blocking my screen. So it's a rallying cry. It's sort of proof that the world is out to get us, that whenever culture shifts or somebody challenges the church, it's like, see, the world hates us. We're being persecuted, right? It's that thing. And sometimes there's truth to that. I think some people right now are claiming persecution when persecution is actually happening. It's just not who we're being told is being persecuted. I'm trying to speak coded there, but there is persecution happening. There are Christians right now being persecuted. It's just not who we think they are. But I think Jesus is saying something far deeper here, something far more uncomfortable for most American Christians. So I came to faith, like I said, in 2001, and one of the first conflicts I ran into was this notion of the world, right? This big, bad, shadowy force out there somewhere that's always trying to corrupt Christians. And many of us were told that everything outside the church's ecosystem was worldly, right? Secular, corrupt, right? The music industry, Hollywood, public schools, universities, fashion, like all of it was part of the world. And that we shouldn't assimilate to it because the church is called out from the world, right? I remember back in the days, somehow we pulled this translation out of somewhere that the church was the called out ones, right? Okay, I mean, there's some of that in the Greek, but in reality, like we're playing with translations here. The reality is we're not supposed to withdraw from the world, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Like we equated separation to Christ-likeness, to holiness. Some of you might relate to this, and I think that for centuries, this has always been the question, or one of the questions within the church. How do we relate to the world? And we'll get into what Jesus means when he says the world. But in general, what we've seen in the American church are three postures towards the world. And the most popular one is the posture of replication. I gave it that fancy name. To counter this boogeyman, the world, right? We go and create a Christian version of it. We don't want our kids to get sucked into the world's ecosystem, so we create our own Christian ecosystem, right? The world gives you Run DMC and Wu-Tang. The church gives you DC Talk, and Carmen, right? The world gives you Lincoln Park, and the church gives you Skillet, right? The world gives you Bad Bunny, Super Bowl half. Let me stop. You go on Threads and you can hear some of my thoughts on that. Like the world gives you Saturday Night Live and the church gives you TBN, praise the Lord. Right? Replication. The world, we got it coming up. The world gives you Halloween. What do we give them? Harvest Festival. Right? On November 1st. So, I remember, oh man, I'm dating myself, whatever. I remember when I first came to, I started going to church all the time, and I showed the church with a Starbucks coffee. And somebody was like, you know what, take that logo and turn it upside down. I'm like, what? So I looked at it upside down, he's like, yeah, you see, it's a satanic symbol. And so and this is a reality, right? Like if you're new to the faith, man, you are blessed and highly favored for skipping out on all this. Because the world gave you Starbucks and we just started popping out with a bunch of Hebrew coffees in our church. And so, right, this was mostly, my experiences was in charismatic circles. And so this is across the board, right, with every category of pop culture, right? And the idea, again, was separation through replication. If we sanitize it with Christian language and aesthetics and funding, it's redeemable. It's kingdom work. The problem with this posture is that there is still this built-in instinct to retreat from the world. Right? We build our own little moral suburb that gives us a sense of safety from the dominant culture. But the irony is that this is anti-incarnational. This is opposite of the gospel. Jesus didn't replicate the world's systems. He stepped into them. He visited the marketplaces, the villages. He stepped into the corrupt systems and presented the story of God, of a God who is a God who abides with his people. He doesn't detach from the world. And we see this at the very beginning of John, right? The Word became flesh and dwelled among them. Another approach that we've seen is complete withdrawal, right? Throughout church history, we've seen this posture, and one of the first was in the 3rd century, maybe late 3rd century. We see the desert fathers and mothers, right? I got that here. There he is. That's Abba Anthony. So after Constantine legalized Christianity, and it was no longer this marginal movement in many aspects, and seeing how easily the faith became co-opted by empire, many early believers fled into the Egyptian desert to live these ascetic lives as a way of preserving their holiness. And I think their intention, honestly, was beautiful. But even they wrestled with this approach. Church Father Athanasius wrote in his book, The Life of Antony, he says this: Antony went into the desert to leave the world behind, only to find the world was still whispering in his own heart. And so throughout church history, there are several examples of Christian movements based on this idea of retreating from the world. We sort of see this a little bit with the early Anabaptists. And in the early 20th century, right, with the fundamentalists, right? So we see this throughout church history of this notion that if we completely withdraw from the world, we can preserve our faith. And one of the other approaches has been assimilation, where instead of hiding from the world, we just blend right into it, where we allow ourselves to be absorbed into political and social categories, right? Stuck in the polarizations. This is what we're seeing now. Believers getting captured by dominant ideologies, right? Tagging themselves with adjectives like Republican or Democrat, conservative or progressive. But none of this is distinct from the world. Each has its own idols to defend, its own language to exclude somebody. And even if we think that we're on the right side of history, Ultimately, we're just mirroring the cultural divisions. Enemies are being made, people are being excluded, curiosity and conversations are being completely foreclosed. Winning is everything. And when winning an argument is all that matters, in the words of one of my seminary professors, spirit gone. When all that matters is winning a debate, winning an argument, the spirit isn't present. And so I want to take a few minutes to look at what Jesus actually means when he says the world here, and what our posture should be towards it. So let's go back to John 15:18. And he says, I just read that, but I'll read it again. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I've chosen you out of the world. This is why the world hates you. And so the problem begins with this word, world. Kosmos, right, which is where we get our word cosmos. You know, cosmology, cosmopolitan. Because there's a lot of disagreement by what Jesus means here, which has sort of led us to where we are now. In that time, cosmos had been used in three distinct ways that would have been alive in the imagination of the people of that time, including the Jewish people, and how one would use the word, right? So there were context clues. How one would use the word would sort of determine which version of the world they were talking about, like many of our English words, right? We sort of, somebody is speaking, and based on the context that they're using, we kind of know, like if he's talking about a plane or a plane, like ground, flat ground. Get it? Whatever. Spelled differently, though. So first way that cosmos was understood, I had a lot of fun with this slide. It was hard to find certain elements in what's this keynote? It's frustrating. Anyways. Sorry, guys. So the first way that cosmos was used was when we're talking about the physical world, all of creation itself, the material cosmos, everything that God made, the land, the seas, the stars, the mountains, the humans. This is the world that Jesus is talking about in John 10, in John 1:10, when he says he was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. But more than that, in the ancient Jewish imagination, this world was viewed as the stage of God's drama unfolding, right? It's this place where the story of God is unraveled, right? And where the heavens and the earth, they're not separate from God, but they're seen as sort of being alive with the presence of God. All of creation, every sunset, every sunrise, every storm, every season, every breath was a reminder that creation itself participates in God's story as this sort of sacred space. And it's really a beautiful image. If you're interested in reading more about that, there's a really good book called Sabbath by Abraham Heschel. He's a Jewish theologian and rabbi. It's a great book. And he talks about the participation of creation within the story of God. Now, the second way that the cosmos, this word cosmos, was understood was in the spiritual and moral world, right? In the spiritual moral sense, this inner realm. This is the world within the human heart, where our desires arise out of, and that makes us human, essentially. And it's this world of beauty and creativity and goodness, but it's also the place where darkness can settle in and disorder our desires. And we see this cosmos throughout scriptures. I would probably argue it's the most used version of that word in the scriptures. But this is the world that Jesus is talking about in Mark 8:36, when he says, "For what does it profit a person to gain the whole world yet lose his soul?" Okay, just kind of connect some dots for you guys. And then the third way that cosmos was understood was in the social and political sense, right? The systems and the structures, right? The order of human society, right? The political, the religious, the sociological, economics, right? Kingdoms and governments, right? What the New Testament would call principalities and powers. This is sort of it's talking about a hierarchical structure that rules over, right? Anything that's hierarchical and that rules over would fall under this category. Anything that demands allegiance would fall under this cosmos. This is the world we see the devil tempting Jesus with in Luke 4, to give you some perspective, right? The devil led him into a high place and showed him all the kingdoms of the world, showed him all the kingdoms of the cosmos of empire, and said, I will give you their authority and their splendor. And this is the sphere where worldly power creeps in that we talk about so much. And it usually doesn't matter what type of social order is created, religious or economic or political. If humans build it, it will always be susceptible to rebel against the way of Jesus, to be antagonistic to God through corruption, control, greed, division, violence, religious complicity. And this is the world that Jesus is talking about when he tells his disciples that the world will hate you. This is the world. He's not talking about the moral or the physical world. He's talking about the world of the Roman Empire, including the religious establishment working within that world. This was a world that didn't just see itself, right? Rome didn't just see itself as the center of the universe. Rome saw itself as the force holding it all together. And it all came from this idea, right, called the orbis terrarum, right, which is Latin for circle of the land, right, symbolizing Rome sort of encompassing all of creation. Now, this slogan, orbis terrarum, was a part of the propaganda machine of Rome. You would see it everywhere, on the coinage, on the statues, on inscriptions. You'd be walking down the street, and there's this ancient graffiti, and you would see Caesar, orbis terrarum, or Rome, orbis terrarum, something of that nature, where you would constantly getting fed this propaganda that at the end of the day, Rome is in charge. Rome encompasses this whole thing, right? It was stamped on coins so that every transaction was essentially a confession of allegiance to the empire, right? This was the gospel of Rome. This was the gospel of Caesar. And the idea was to remind everyone that Rome controlled everything, and that if it happened within the empire, it's because Rome allowed it. And many of the Jewish establishment at that time were part of this cosmos, right? Client kings like Herod and others played along with the system under the control of Caesar. And if they kept the people in line and never questioned Rome, then they get to keep their seats of power. That's the world, the cosmos, that Jesus is talking about in John 15. He's saying the entire order, the political, the economic, and the religious, will turn against you when you stop serving its agenda. The world will hate you. And remember, Jesus had just finished a long discourse about loving each other. Tommy talked about this last week, that there is no greater love than to lay down your life for your friend. He's telling them, like there's no, this is, the text flows into one another, right? He's saying the world will hate you right after talking about this type of love, friendship, all these things. And he's telling them that they will live according to an entirely new ethic. And that ethic is love. That ethic is indiscriminate love. This ethic is cross-shaped, it's self-emptying, and it's other-oriented. And it's an ethic that's completely opposite to the ethic of Rome, to the ethic of Babylon, to the ethic of empire, to the ethic of worldly power, which is the historical ethic of domination, manipulation, violence, exclusion. If you see that, then you know which cosmos that belongs to. And so he's telling them, because of this love, you will be hated. Because this way of love exposes the emptiness of the empire's logic. Church, like worldly power, will hate what it can't control. Professor David Fitch calls this the enemy-making machine. And if things we stand for, and I want to make sure that I get this point across. If the things we stand for make enemies out of people, we're controllable. If the things we stand for make enemies out of people, we're operating under the cosmos of empire. even if we think that we're on the right side of history. This is why Jesus tells us to love our enemies, to will goodness towards them. Because worldly power can't control people who refuse to hate their enemies. People who refuse to strive for power. Worldly power, the empire, can't control people who would much rather lay down their lives for the powerless and pray for the ones that hate them. People who are not out to win an argument, not after social credit, but live as a counter order to the binaries of this culture. Right? Left, right, conservative, progressive. And they do it armed only with a story. And it's the story of Jesus. Not a sword, not a gun, just a story. This is why Jesus calls them later on in 16, that the Spirit will come, the advocate will come, and you will be witnesses to this story. That's what you arm yourself with, church. And I know that today for some, it's easy to point to one side or the other and say, good guy, bad guy. Right, wrong. That's Caesar, this is Jesus. But I would argue, if our faith requires an enemy in order to feel righteous, that's empire. That's the cosmos of empire. Recently, I was in LA. I've shared before, I'm bivocational, so in my day job, I do community development work. And I was in LA working with some nonprofits there, and they are in the thick of it, as you could imagine what's going on in LA. And was meeting with some local leaders, meeting with some pastors, meeting with some city council folks. And after one of the meetings, I was walking towards my car. The gentleman that I had the meeting with was walking with me. He's a white guy, and I say that for a reason. And then all of a sudden, a pastor comes up to us. And this is a pastor who leads like one of the most impactful black churches in LA. And they're friends apparently, and they do some introductions. And this guy that was with me in the meeting, the pastor had said something and prompted this guy to say, you know, Pastor, I know you lean a little left, but you're easy to talk to. But you're just so hard to place. And I kind of backed up. And then the pastor leans in, touches him on the shoulder, and says, place me where the poor are being fed and where the hurting are cared for. Man. I leaned in and I said, you need to collect an offering. Because that was, I ran to my car, like did a quick voice memo, because I'm like, I must share this. That was just a banger, man. But yes, he gets it. The church should seem like, the church should be hard to place. And not because we're unclear, and not because we won't take a position, but because we have no allegiance to a side, only to Jesus. And like Paul said, this is foolishness to the world. If we live by the ethic of indiscriminate, other-oriented love, this will be foolishness to the people that have ensconced themselves in the cultural divisions of society. This is the whole point of what Jesus is telling his disciples in John 15. That at the core of his message, the church was meant to be a new kind of social order. We should be hard to place. This is what Paul is talking about in Romans 12, right? Not to be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Right? He's not talking about withdrawing from the world. He's not even talking about replicating it to create some sanitized version of it. He's saying being a disciple of Jesus means refusing to be shaped by the systems of power that divide and arrange people into categories of worth. And yes, we're called to resist the powers and principalities. I'm all for that. Y'all know me. But it also means resisting the ever-present temptation to mirror the patterns of this world. And I like how Jesus talks about friendship in the previous passage. Because one of the most y'all really want to know how to subvert the ways of the empire? Yeah. That'll really throw a wrench in this cosmos of domination and coercion and exclusion. Start pursuing friendships that violate all of these ideologies. Start pursuing friendships that are hard to make. Just look at the makeup of the 12 disciples, right? Different backgrounds, different classes, different politics, different social economics. Some were actually enemies before Jesus came along. And he's talking to them about friendship. He recruits them, brings them all together, and says, you must love one another. And the world's going to know that I exist. The world's going to know. You're going to subvert the empire because of your love. And why would that seem like such a problematic thing with a group of 12 people that hung out for 3 years together? What? No, the problem is it was hard for them to love each other before Jesus. And he brings them together and says, all right, let's do life together. That subverts the empire. And this is our calling as well, to form bonds that make no sense apart from Jesus. This is how the kingdom breaks in. This is where I've noticed the Spirit being the most present. When compassion and love and fellowship is inconvenient and actually costs us something. Where the word neighbor actually means everyone. This is the picture that the Gospels give us of how we are to be in the world, how we are to relate to the world, sitting in the pain that we had nothing to do with, listening when we could easily argue, loving when it might cost us status with our own people. That's where the Spirit is in all of this right now, Watermark. Not in the demonstrations of power, not in the performative acts of solidarity, but in presence, in proximity to the powerless, to the stranger, to the so-called enemy. They are all our neighbor according to Jesus. And that is foolishness to the world. And the world will hate us for loving so indiscriminately. And I think that's cool. And if we're going to be hated, right, don't let it be because you made an enemy or chose violence or greed. Let it be because you showed up for someone when everybody else looked the other way. Let it be because you loved when it was risky, when it was inconvenient, when it was dangerous, when it might cost you your reputation with your friends, family, coworkers, politics. So I want to subvert the Watermark system a little bit today. I want to break with tradition. We are not going to do the Lord's Prayer today. Yes, I know. I'm going to get some flack for this later. No, I'm kidding. We're free. But I want to share a slide with you guys from a professor and a pastor in Lawndale, Illinois. His name is Wayne Gordon. He was a professor at Tommy and I's seminary. And he does some amazing work there in Lawndale. Him and that church have completely turned around that community. And he wrote a book a while back called Who is My Neighbor? And he's got an excerpt in that book that I thought would be great for us to read communally. So let's all stand. I'm going to try my best to read it at this angle, but let's do it together and let's mean it, starting now. My neighbor is someone hurting, who needs help, who cannot help themselves, who appears on my path, who has been robbed, who is half dead, who is naked, who is unable to ask for help, of a different race, who is a stranger, who has been stripped, who is a foreign traveler, who has been beaten up, who might require me to take a risk, who can't walk, who looks horrible, who is of a different religion, who is destitute, who is a victim of injustice, who has been passed by, who can't say thank you, who has been wounded, whom nobody wants to help, who is lonely, who will cost me some time, who is visible, who is a victim, who has been violated, who is vulnerable, who is a human being, who feels humiliated, who feels helpless, who is poor, who is someone I'm afraid to help, who is dangerous to help, who is discouraged, who might cost me money, who needs tender, loving care, who feels defeated, and who is someone I'm unable to help. Amen. If you're going to pray this week, pray for the people of Jamaica and Eastern Cuba and Hispaniola. They're about to be ravaged by a really horrible hurricane, and I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. So pray for those folks, okay? Everybody have a great Sunday. Amen.